May the Spirit of love move among us, that we may know the truth, and the truth may set us free. May it be so. Our Unitarian and Universalist spiritual ancestors had a really big problem with creeds, which are just formal statements of belief that people had to agree with in order to belong to a church. And there are many churches today that still have creeds that you have to believe in order to belong. It's not that our ancestors didn't have beliefs. It's not that they didn't want to make a commitment to a set of beliefs, but they just didn't want someone to tell them what they had to believe or how they had to believe it, or to force them to profess something that they didn't agree with in order to belong to a spiritual community. And so they rejected creedal religion in favor of covenantal religion. Now, covenant is a really strange-sounding word, but we throw it around a lot in Unitarian Universalism. We love it. It is one of our favorite things, that we are in covenant with one another. But what does it really mean? I think that we need to understand what it means in order to really know what we're getting ourselves into by rejecting a creed in favor of a covenant. The idea comes from the Jewish tradition, and it refers to a solemn promise or vow that's made between a person or a group of people and God. The Christian tradition, from which our tradition has evolved, also espoused the idea of covenant. In Christianity, there are two sections of the Bible: the Old Testament, which is a testament of the Old Covenant made with Abraham, and the New Covenant, or the New Testament, which is a testament of this new covenant made with us through Jesus. In Unitarian Universalism, we refer to covenant. When we refer to covenant, we're speaking of a solemn agreement that we are making with one another. And our covenants contain a basic statement of our ethos, or our guiding principles, and the actions that we pledge to take in response to that ethos. One of the covenants this church makes is as a congregational member of the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is our denomination. This covenant contains, among other things, the 7 principles, which are really just actions that we say that we will take together as a church. Next month, our theme is going to take us through our 7 principles so that we kind of understand, what do we mean, what are we talking about when we talk about our 7 principles? But that's not the only covenant that we have as a church. We have a congregational covenant that every individual who is a member and every person who chooses to join with us in worship and in service agree to when they participate, when they become a member. This covenant outlines our core guiding philosophy and the actions that we pledge to take together as a church. It represents the basis of right relations with one another, what you have to do in order to stay in a right relationship, to be a productive member of our church. I'm not sure when we adopted our covenant at First Universalist. Do you know, CJ?
92.
1990. Oh, it's as old as me. We adopted it the year before. Oh, I just outed myself. I'm 25. Earl and I were born at the same time. I knew it was around since 2000 because I found a bulletin in the sanctuary from 2000 and it was on there. The covenant, though, is not 31 years old. It was actually written in 1896, a little bit after our church was founded, by the Reverend James Viola Blake. He was the minister at the time of the Unitarian Church in Evanston, Illinois. And he wrote this covenant for their congregation. And it was such a banger. That's a slang term for young people. I realized my congregation's age was a little bit above that, average age. It was so good that a lot of Unitarian and Universalist congregations adopted it and still use it today. In fact, it's in our hymnal as one of the covenants. According to our covenant, the guiding philosophy of this church, the thing that is our ethos, that describes who we are and sort of what we generally believe as a people, is that love is its spirit and service is its law. Which seems pretty simple, but if you've been watching my sermons that I've been posting, it's not as simple as it might sound. I was able to talk about it for at least 16 minutes a week, so I hope that you have a chance to check that out if you haven't already. The quick version of the last 3 weeks of sermons is that our church's guiding philosophy is that we are to be a people who are guided by the Spirit of love. We make love the basis for our actions. And we use service as the medium by which and through which we love other people. We live out that love in the world. We are to be a people who practice radical self-love and radical self-acceptance. We are mindful of our strengths. We're mindful of our areas of improvement. This is not a blind, I'm just going to accept myself as I am and not work on myself. This is knowing who we are fully and saying, that's all right. I'll give myself some grace. I'll give myself some kindness. I've been through some stuff. While also committing to being a better person. We respond to that love that we have for ourselves by pouring it out on other people. And we do this by selflessly serving other people. And we do that by pouring into other people's hearts a little love, because some people just need a little love in their hearts, as the song says. Guided by this ethos, we promise that we're going to do a couple things. The first is that we will dwell together in peace. The second is that we will seek the truth in love. And the third is that we will help one another. So let's walk through, in the time we have left, what those three actions mean and what we're really promising to do, or at least aspiring to do. We'll use aspiring. Promise is a strong word. Unitarian Universalists don't like strong words. I'm a recovering Church of Christ victim. And so
Church of Christ.
We like strong words in the Church of Christ. Dwelling together in peace does not mean that we will never have disagreements, that we will never be upset with one another, and that, heaven forbid, we might actually dislike each other at some time in our relationship. Warren, did we disagree yet?
We will eventually.
We will, yeah. As a psychologist and as a minister, I'm here to tell you that living in harmony 100% of the time ain't going to happen. It's not. We're going to be in conflict. Human beings are animals. Animals are selfish. Animals fight each other. That's just who we are. That's the nature of the beast. And it's not going to change. So what are we really committing to when we say, well, we're going to dwell together in peace? Our commitment to peace means that when we have disagreements about how to do things around here, we will seek resolution quickly and submit to the democratic majority, decision of the majority, and not do everything in our power to hinder and obstruct our common work. Our commitment to peace means that when we're upset with one another, that we won't foment discord within the community, but instead we'll seek to make things right with one another, to get back into right relations, without involving and dragging other people into it. Our commitment to peace means that when we don't like each other very much, we will make a concerted effort to get to know each other better, so that instead of sitting around and being angry with each other, we can look at the things about that person that we like and that we value. Because we know that it's better to be open and to be compassionate with one another than to sit in isolation and hostility. And this shouldn't just stop at the church door or the community center door. It should go out into the community. It should guide all of our interactions with all of our brethren and sisters and siblings. We must be a people of peace. Our covenant to seek the truth and love means that you and I are free to seek our own personal beliefs and truths responsibly with love as our guide. As a UU Christian, my primary revelation of truth is found in the teachings and the life of Jesus. My preferred worship is found in some of the rituals of Christianity. I love communion. I'm ambivalent about baptism, but I really love communion. That's something that I find so meaningful, and it's one of my favorite parts of worship. I personally have a non-theistic conceptualization of God as an all-conquering love that binds the universe together. So I'm not like a traditional Christian where I believe God is some man in the sky. I believe that God is like the Force in Star Wars. And that is my conceptualization of God. It may not be other Christians' conceptualization. That's my truth. But it's not necessarily your truth. It's not necessarily your preferred way of engaging your spirituality. And that's perfectly fine. Some of you derive great meaning and beauty from Buddhism, humanism, and pagan, heathen, and earth-centered practices. Some of you do not believe in a singular God or any God at all. And that also is fine. That's not my truth. It's your truth. It's your preference. And that's fine. And just as an aside, I do find a lot of beauty and meaning in each of these perspectives. I think CJ gave a really great analogy to me once. You can speak many languages, but there will always be one mother language that you have. For me, Christianity is my mother language. But I like to dabble in other languages and other religions. Our covenant invites us to share in these holy and sacred experiences, not to make one of them our primary and recurring focus. In the past, this was an explicitly and an exclusively Christian church. Universalism was a Christian denomination at one point. But it's not anymore. And it's not going back to where it was. And as a Christian pastor, I'm very comfortable saying that's okay. It's okay to let go of the need for one voice to always be the one that we hear. We recognize as Unitarian Universalists that we all are traveling different paths to truth. And often these paths converge. There's so much, when I study comparative religion, I realize there's so much that all the world's religions have in common. There's very little that they don't have in common. We converge in so many different ways. Sometimes our paths diverge, but even when they diverge from one another, we can still hear each other through the trees. We can still glimpse each other through the foliage. If we make love our common guide in the search for truth, we are letting go of the need for our path to be the path that everybody has to travel down. And I'm thankful for that, because I went hiking with my grandparents one time, and they wanted to take the difficult themed path. I wanted to take the paved path around the parking lot, and that was as far as I wanted to go. I don't want anyone to be dragged down a path all the time that they don't like. Instead, we're rejoicing in the times when our paths meet, or at least close enough to remain in conversation along the way, because the people we love are having their spiritual needs met. I find great joy in that even if CJ worships differently than me, or Linda worships differently than me, or Garrison worships differently than me, and I'm calling on them because I know that they do, that I'm happy that they're doing what makes them feel fulfilled. And I'm not trying to force them to do what makes me feel fulfilled. And now the last one. One would think that helping one another is the easiest of our commitments. I find it to be the hardest of our commitments. Sometimes I would like to help one another off the side of a cliff. I'm a psychologist. I trained as a therapist. I very quickly realized that if I was a therapist, I would become a serial killer. I don't like people that much. So I decided to be a minister instead, because I only have to interact with people once a week. So it's not me. No, I like people. I like people in small doses. I'm very introverted. I'm going to go home after this and crash. This is about as much interaction as I can take for a day. Helping one another is a lot easier said than done. Now, it is very tempting to limit our helping to helping someone to a serving of pimento cheese sandwiches at the potluck one Sunday a month, and to go about our lives as if this place and these beloveds don't exist the other 29 to 30 days. But being here at least one day a week, which is Wednesdays from 11 to 4 if you want to come chill, being here at least one day a week reminds me that this place and these beloveds have needs. They are alive. They are breathing. They exist 365 days of the year. And one of the needs that we all have, not just the people here, but this building as well, is a life-affirming community that's invested in their thriving. Because if you haven't noticed, the world is generally a life-sucking, wallet-draining, overscheduled, literal hellscape that we are all struggling to survive. And I remember the pandemic like it was yesterday, and I remember living in isolation and not having that community when the world was literally at its most draining and isolating. We need community with one another. And there are some of us, because of their life situation and their life circumstances, that are all largely the result of their birth, who are really struggling even harder than even I am. And I have my own struggles. Our Unitarian and Universalist forebears saw destroying this hell as a means of living the faith they carried in their hearts. They didn't just keep it inside. They said, I must live it out in the world. And as a result of this belief and this commitment to building a beloved community, that we have things like public education, emancipation of the people of color of this country, women's suffrage. The American Red Cross is the result of an effort of a Universalist. These are just a few things. This flaming chalice, which is the symbol of our faith, do you know its origin? It was the emblem used by the Unitarian Service Committee as they liberated the victims of the Nazis in Europe during the 1940s. The emblem of our faith is a symbol of hope for people who are living in a literal hell. Unitarian Universalism and this church, as a Unitarian Universalist church, is not a social club with religion-themed variety shows that meets once a month and we go away and forget about it. It is an intentional communal response to our belief in the supremacy of love that is manifested in daily working to make heaven on earth by destroying the hells that have been constructed against our will and in our name against other people in the name of selfishness, greed, propaganda, and fear. Today we are gathered not just because we want a good potluck and because we want to see each other and to pat ourselves on the back that we're not intolerant, but we're gathered here because we have covenanted to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And I invite you to hear this call to covenant. Whether this is your first time here with us, or you've been going here your entire life, to hear this call, to answer it, to affirm and renew your commitment to being a peaceable, loving, and helpful people. To affirm that you want to be an active and productive member of this beloved community that is boldly progressing forward towards a world that needs it, and fearlessly willing to get its hands dirty in the process. Beloveds, when others ask what we did best, and at our 200th anniversary, which is 4 years down the road, I will be 75. I will be here. If I'm still alive, I will be here when I'm 75 at our 200th anniversary. When other people ask what we did best over the last 44 years, may we be a people of whom it can be said that they truly said yes to love. May it be so.